Your FAFSA appeal was denied. And if you're sitting with that letter right now, I want you to know that a denial is not the end of the road. A lot of families hear FAFSA appeal denied and assume the conversation is over. It's not. There's a formal reconsideration path, and whether or not you can walk it depends on understanding exactly why the denial happened in the first place. By the end of this video, you'll know the 3 most common reasons appeals get rejected, how to tell which one applies to your situation, and what a reconsideration request actually looks like when it works. And there's one specific reason financial aid offices reject otherwise valid appeals, a reason that has nothing to do with your documentation or your circumstances, and I'll tell you what to do about it before we're done. Take Maya. She's in her early 20s, working her way through college on her own, and she started tutoring high school students in math and SAT prep through an online scheduling app to cover her living expenses. She was bringing in somewhere between $600 and $800 a month. Not a lot, just enough to get by. When that income showed up on her financial aid forms, her school flagged it and reevaluated her aid package. She filed a professional judgment appeal to explain that the tutoring income wasn't replacing parental support, it was the only income she had. 9 days later, her appeal came back denied. She'd done everything by the book. She had documentation, she had a letter, and it still wasn't enough. I'll show you exactly what she was missing and what she did next. There are 3 reasons a FAFSA appeal gets denied, and most families run into at least one of them without realizing it. The first is insufficient documentation. This is the most common one. Financial aid offices aren't in a position to take your word for things. They need third-party evidence that confirms what your letter says. If you write that a parent lost their job, but you didn't include a termination letter, a final pay stub, or an unemployment determination notice, the FAO has no way to verify the claim. They're not going to call your employer. They're going to close the file. The bar for documentation is higher than most people expect, and the checklist runs to roughly 7 or 8 items depending on your specific circumstance. Maya's initial appeal had her own earnings records but was light on documentation showing that those earnings were her primary means of support. No lease, no statement from a parent confirming they weren't contributing financially. That gap was enough. The second reason is no qualifying circumstance. Not every hardship is something a financial aid office has the authority to address. Under the federal statute, a financial aid administrator can use professional judgment to adjust your aid package, but only for documented, unusual circumstances that meaningfully differ from what the FAFSA already captures. Vague financial stress doesn't qualify. High cost of living in your city doesn't qualify. Feeling like your aid package is unfair doesn't qualify. If your appeal letter doesn't clearly name a specific change in your financial situation, a job loss, a medical event, a reduction in income, a family crisis, the FAO has no legal basis to act on it, even if they want to help you. The third reason is an incomplete letter. This one is quieter, but it's just as damaging. An appeal letter that doesn't tell a clear chronological story, when the change happened, what it was, how it affected your ability to pay, and what you're specifically requesting, gives the FAO nothing to work with. A letter that's vague or emotional without being factual doesn't meet the threshold. The FAO needs something they can put in your file and defend to an auditor. If your letter doesn't give them that, the answer is going to be no, even if your circumstances genuinely qualify. Now here's the one I said I'd come back to. The reason FAOs reject otherwise valid appeals that has nothing to do with your paperwork or your circumstances. Timing. Financial aid offices have limited discretionary funds. Professional judgment appeals are reviewed in the order they arrive, and those funds can run out mid-year. If you filed your appeal late in the award cycle, or if you're filing your reconsideration request late after a denial, you may be running up against an empty pool, not a closed case. This doesn't mean you stop. It means your reconsideration request needs to acknowledge the timing directly and ask specifically whether there's any remaining flexibility in the current award year, or whether the record can be preserved for a priority review at the start of the next cycle. So what does a FAFSA reconsideration request actually look like? First, you're not refiling your original appeal. You're writing a new letter that acknowledges the denial, identifies exactly what was missing or unclear, and supplies what wasn't there the first time. This is a different document with a different purpose. It's not longer, it's more precise. If your denial was for insufficient documentation, your reconsideration letter leads with the specific evidence you're now attaching and explains clearly why that evidence speaks to the original claim. If your denial was for no qualifying circumstance, Your letter needs to reframe your situation in the language the FAO is looking for: documented, unusual, specific, and tied to a concrete change in financial circumstances. If your original letter was incomplete, the reconsideration version tells the story more clearly: date, event, impact, request. Maya went back and did exactly this. She got a statement from her mother confirming that she receives no financial support from her family. She pulled her lease showing she's solely responsible for her rent. She pulled 3 months of bank statements showing that her tutoring income was her only deposit source. And she rewrote her letter to explain that the FAFSA income she'd reported wasn't supplemental, it was total. That reframe mattered. Her reconsideration request treated the denial as a gap in her record, not as a verdict. One thing to keep in mind: a FAFSA appeal, meaning a formal second review after a denial, isn't a guaranteed right at every school. Some institutions have a formal reconsideration process built into their policies. Others handle second reviews on a case-by-case basis at the FAO's discretion. Before you submit anything, call the financial aid office and ask directly: is there a formal process to request reconsideration after a denial, or is that handled informally? That one question tells you exactly how to frame your submission and who it should be addressed to. When you call, keep the conversation factual and brief. You're not arguing the case on the phone, you're gathering information about the process. Ask about the timeline for reconsideration decisions, whether there's a specific form or submission format they require, and who the right contact is for a second review. Write down exactly what they tell you. Maya did this and found out her school had a secondary reviewer, a different administrator who handled denied appeals, and that her original letter had never been seen by that person. That was important information. Now here's the payoff I promised you at the start, the thing that made the difference for Maya and that most people skip entirely. Her first appeal letter was written about her circumstances. Her reconsideration letter was written for the FAO's file. That's the shift. A financial aid administrator isn't just deciding whether to help you, they're building a record that justifies a federal funds adjustment. Every sentence in your reconsideration letter needs to be something they can quote in that justification: date, event, dollar amount, document attached, outcome requested. When Maya's reconsideration letter came back approved, the administrator told her it was because the second letter was complete. Not more emotional, not more detailed. Complete. That word means something specific in a financial aid office. It means every claim has a document, and every document is referenced in the letter. That's the framework. Your job isn't to make the FAO feel bad for you, it's to make it easy for them to say yes. I put the reconsideration letter template into the pack at fafsa-appeal.com. It's structured exactly around that logic, with the documentation reference language built in so you're not guessing at the format. The income change worksheet is in there too, which helps you lay out the numbers clearly before you write a single word of the letter itself. If this video helped you make sense of where you are, a like genuinely helps YouTube put it in front of other families going through the same thing. And there are a few more videos on this channel that walk through the specific appeal circumstances in more detail if you want to keep going. A denial isn't a closed door. It's a gap in the record. Find the gap, fill it, and send it back.